Reverend David A. Noebel. Thank you very much, Jack. It's good to be here tonight. Appreciate the opportunity to share with you on a few subjects that have interested me over the years. Unfortunately, the subject isn't really an ideal subject for an after-dinner speech. In fact, I sent my outline to Brother McManus, and he clipped half of it. Because originally I was told that I was going to speak to the council members, and I realized that the council members were earthy gentlemen, no ladies. And so I thought, well, with that group I could certainly put in print the words of the songs that are being beamed into the eyes and nose and ears of our young people. I thought the men could take it. But after looking at the words that our young people are presently listening to 24 hours a day on their rock and roll stations, Brother McManus thought that the words weren't fit for consumption here tonight. Now, that shows the commentary of where we are in this particular area. Incidentally, Nancy Reagan the other day said that women were like tea bags. And I want to begin with that point there. I think it's a real fitting point. I wish we were all tea bags tonight. In fact, I'm not so sure we're not. As members of the Birch Society, the story goes like this, that we really don't get involved and excited about something until we're put in some real hot water. And then the real strength comes out. I like that. I think what she was giving that to some Republican women, but I think it fits us right here. And my chore tonight is to make the water boiling. And I think I can. In fact, if I can't, I've missed my calling. Because the subject that has been given to me by Brother Jack makes me boil just thinking about it. And yet not too many people are concerned. My subject tonight is the legacy of John Lennon. In specific, but in more general terms, we're talking really about cultural revolution. In fact, if we had time tonight, I would begin back somewhat and bring you up to date on where we are in modern literature, modern art, and modern films before I ever got to modern music. Max Rafferty did an article not too long ago, and I thought it was excellent. His concluding words were something like this: Our modern culture today tells us that we're insane. Maybe our culture is telling us the truth. You go to a modern art museum today, ladies and gentlemen, and you can't tell if the paintings are upside down or inside out. In a very famous, prestigious New York art gallery, this was just a few months ago too, and this made the papers. A very famous painter's painting was upside down for 6 months before they discovered it. Now, you know immediately that there's something wrong when that occurs. I have with me, now you're going to have to take Jack's word for this because I want to show him, but that's about all. This is a 5-page review in Art in America, one of the more prestigious art journals in this country. This is Walter DeMaria's piece of art in a very prestigious gallery in New York. And if Jack had to come up here and describe the art, this is the art room, by the way, you're missing it, Jack. If he had to describe the art in his art room, he would get up here and say 0, because he's not looking in the right spot. It's 2 feet of dirt on the floor. That's the art. 2 feet of dirt on this floor. 5-page raving review of this wonderful art, because this artist, Walter DeMaria, brought the artwork in from Wyoming. Are we hard up or not? The University of Colorado accepted as a piece of art about 8 or 9 years ago 18 plates of horse manure. When I told my father-in-law at that time, a dairy farmer in Wisconsin, he told me he was an artist his whole life and didn't even realize it. In fact, he told me he was throwing his artwork away. And just recently, I spoke out here in Boyne Park to a group of women, And, well, no, it really wasn't. In fact, I was with John. John spoke to the same group. John Schmitz and I spoke to a group of young people, and they had women in the other room, but we got the young people that day, about 500 of them. And after that meeting, this gal came up and she said, I just graduated from college. And she said, I was majoring in interior decorating, and I just took a class in art. And I kept getting C's in that class. And she said, I knew I was a halfway decent artist. My trees even looked like a tree. And then about halfway through the course, she said, I realized I was making a mistake. You know what she did for her final exam? She took a piece of plywood right out to one of your highways out here, and she took her paint and her tubes or whatever, cans, or no, she didn't spray it, but she had, I guess, in some tubes, and she threw the paint on the plywood, and she allowed the cars to go over it. About 50 cars, and then she threw more paint, 50 cars, more paint, 50 cars, more paint. It was the only A she got in class the whole semester. That was last year, ladies and gentlemen, last year. Our art is sick. And I don't want to be over-emotional tonight either. Our art is sick. Max Rafferty is absolutely correct. If you look in our modern art museums today, it's reflecting a sick society. That is no accident. Picasso was the father of modern-day art. Picasso was an atheist. Picasso was a member of the Communist Party. He joined the party in 1943, incidentally. Picasso admitted to the world that his art was a reflection of his atheistic worldview. Does that tell you something? And most of our art in our universities and colleges today are reflections of Picasso. But that isn't even my subject tonight, but it's an easy one to start with because there are some teenagers here, and I usually start someplace in that area because most teenagers aren't going to art museums, so they don't throw anything at that point. But at the next point is where the static begins. Because not only is our art sick, not only is our literature sick, not only are our films sick to death, but the next subject is also sick, sick, sick. I'm talking about rock and roll in general, Lennon in particular tonight. Solzhenitsyn spoke at Harvard University in 1978 on the subject of a world split apart. Excellent address, incidentally. I still can't figure out why Harvard allowed him on campus. Everything he said was pointed at the professors at Harvard University. He said, the trouble with the world is socialism. And he was looking right at the socialists. The trouble with the world, he said, were the humanists. And he was looking right at the humanists. That's why they didn't stone him. But you know what was interesting? The one thing that drew more criticism than anything else he said was this quote. Listen to the quote. The human soul longs for things higher, warmer, and purer than those offered by today's intolerable music. Isn't that something? And some conservative writers even went after him because they thought he was slapping rock and roll music. He never mentioned rock and roll, but I'm sure that's what he had in mind. Why is it so sacrosanct? CBS 2 years ago was going to do a 2-hour special feature on rock and roll music. I know, because I was supposed to be part of it. In fact, I spent hours sending him, photographing and doing materials for him, sending him to Chicago. It was cut. The program was cut. ABC was going to do a 1-hour special. It was cut. Even National Enquirer was going to do an expose of rock and roll music. The research director, the research editor, this is National Enquirer. I mean, everything gets in there. It was nearly cut. It was dropped down to about 3 paragraphs. 3 paragraphs. Now, why can't we discuss rock and roll music? Well, I know one reason for sure. It's so filthy you can't repeat it to a decent audience. That's one problem right there. And maybe the newspaper said, well, we can't print that in a family newspaper. But maybe there's another reason too. I've come to the conclusion that rock and roll music is the vehicle today for the sexual, social revolution. And, my friends, you might be concerned about pornography. Pornography today is a $4 billion business. Rock and roll is a $12 billion business. Rock and roll music today is pornography set to music. But it's even more than that. It's even more than that. Jerry Rubin wrote a book called Do It. Jerry said, rock and roll marked the beginning of the revolution. We see sex, rock and roll, and dope as part of a communist plot to take over America. We've combined youth, this is Jerry Rubin, now on Wall Street, incidentally. We've combined youth, music, sex, drugs, and rebellion with treason. And that's a combination hard to beat. Paul Cantor, the Jefferson Airplane, said this. By the way, he's just recuperating out here from a heart attack. Not too far from where we are tonight. But he still said it. Our music is intended to broaden the generation gap, to alienate children from parents, to prepare people for the revolution. Now, I don't have time to get into a great deal of facts and statistics because I haven't been given that much time, for one thing. But I'm going to try to just sketch what the problem is, and then if you're interested, you can go out and they tell me they have a whole packet of material out there for you tonight. You can just pick it up and read it on your own. We got not only what John mentioned here, an 8-page summary of the quotes that I'm going to be using, or some of the quotes, but the book is going to be out there and a few other things. So if you're interested in this area, and I'm hoping that I can interest a few of you in this area, only because this is our future generation we're talking about that's under attack, vicious attack, you can do some homework too. Now, I don't know if it's surprised you or not, but just recently we deified an individual in this country, literally. We canonized an individual. On December the 8th last year, John Lennon was shot to death in New York. Now, obviously, that's a very sad thing, no matter how you put it. As Christians, we only can offer our condolences and sympathy in such a situation. But records are records, my friends. And even though we offer our condolences and sympathies in such a case like this, there is a record that needs to be analyzed. Shortly after he was shot to death, various churches had special services on his behalf. One of the largest Episcopal churches in New York City had a special, on behalf of John Lennon, a special service on behalf of John Lennon. And at the conclusion of that particular service, the organist struck out with John Lennon's famous song called Imagine. Now, those of you that aren't in on this subject and know nothing about rock and roll and nothing about the Beatles and nothing about John Lennon perhaps, it doesn't make at this point when I say that, it might not mean a great deal. But let me just tell you this. Imagine was John Lennon's anthem to atheism. It was his anthem to atheism. It begins about, there's no heaven above us, no hell below us, above us only sky. This is all we're going to live for is right here and now. This is all we have. In fact, it begins with a total denial of God, and then it moves into a socialistic one-world type of philosophy. Now that's Imagine. After he died, after he was shot to death, that song was played throughout the country nearly every hour on the hour. And many said that this was his greatest song. Now, if that's true, if that's his greatest song, that is his song to atheism, then we have some real explaining to do on why the Christians would play such type of material in their churches. But this is the ignorance that we have right now in our country in this particular area. In fact, I brought with me, and I sort of, I don't even know how to handle these things right here. I brought with me the latest album. This album was being made at the very time that John Lennon was shot. It came out in an album called Double Fantasy. And this is just a cut on it. I don't have the courage to play it. I was at a place yesterday where someone did. They played it for the whole group. I don't even have the courage to do it. But this one of the songs in Double Fantasy is called Kiss, Kiss, Kiss. And this is Yoko Ono, John's wife, making love with John on the record with all of the background materials and so forth. And if I played it for you tonight, some of you would understand what I was talking about. Now, way back in 1964, and by the way, there are no surprises here. Way back in 1964, when the Beatles came over, they made the Saturday Evening Post. And the quotes that they gave to the Post at that time were enough to make someone wonder what's going on. They told the Post that, the Saturday Evening Post reported that they were the representatives of the British Beat generation, and that they were involved, get this now, in social rebellion. That was 1964. Also, it mentioned the fact that they were rude, profane, and vulgar. This was a quote from their own press officer at that time, Derek Taylor, that they were rude, profane, and vulgar, and completely anti-Christ. It was 1964. In 1965, Paul McCartney nearly let the cat out of the bag when he said, well, we're really not anti-religious, but some people think we are because none of us believe in God. And I thought to myself, well, I guess you could jump to that conclusion, but I always remember Tom Anderson's little story about jumping to conclusions. Someone asked him, why do you always jump to conclusions? And Tom said, I don't know where else to jump. And then John came out with that famous little winner, Christianity will go. We're more popular than Jesus now. But my friends, that was just the beginning. That was back in 1964, 65, and 66. In 67, we had some real problems. And by the way, we're still suffering from it. I don't know if you can see this album or not. I brought the albums with me because sometimes when I speak on this, they don't believe me. So I say, well, come up and look for yourself. I don't think I have that problem here tonight. This is Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, 1967. You're looking at the album that put a generation of young people into the drug culture, my friends. Into the drug culture. Isn't it amazing? John could sing about his atheism and his anti-Christian tendencies. And incidentally, in 65, he referred to Jesus Christ as a garlic-eating, stinking, little, yellow, greasy, fascist, bastard Catholic Spaniard. That was 65 in his work, A Spaniard in the Works. So he set the stage rather well. And then came forth with this album that sunk millions of young people into the drug culture, the counterculture. Even Time magazine referred to this album as being drenched in drugs. And if you read the biographies of the Beatles by Hunter Davies and some of the other ones, none of them deny it. None of them deny it. And yet, you know what surprised me? Well, I guess it really didn't surprise me because nothing does anymore. In 1978, now notice, this one was 1967. In 1978, they came out with a repeat of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, 2 years ago. And they disked the more famous Beatle numbers, 28 in all. 14 are drug-related songs. Drug-related songs. And this was put out by Peter Frampton and the Bee Gees, Errol Smith, Alice Cooper, Earth, Wind and Fire, etc. And Newsweek magazine reviewed this album and gave a 7-page review praising the album and the film. And their authority for what a wonderful album and a wonderful film this is Newsweek magazine, July the 31st, 1978. Their authority for praising this whole album and the film series was Dr. Timothy Leary. He was the one that they quoted. In fact, Tim said, my favorite song is I Get High with a Little Help from My Friends. In case some of you aren't aware of Leary, Leary was actually thrown out of Harvard University for putting his own students on LSD. So I wrote to Newsweek. I wrote to the editor. A very nice letter, by the way. I'm usually nice anyway. Very nice letter. And I said, you've given 7 pages to this drug-drenched album. And we have millions of young people in the drug culture right now. And parents beside themselves trying to rescue their kids. And you spend 7 pages glorifying a drug film and a drug record. I demand at least 1 page to refute that thing. And I got a letter back from the editor. Nearly fell out of my high chair. And he said, of course. So I spent 2 months out of my life preparing a 1-page article for Newsweek magazine. I sent it all over the country. I had I had 5 PhDs look at it just to make sure it was letter perfect. And it was pretty good, I have to admit that. After I got it back, it didn't look like it was my own, in fact. And I sent it off to Newsweek, and I got a little love letter back from Newsweek. Dear Mr. Noebel, we're sorry, but this just isn't the type of material for our publication. Isn't that sad? Yeah, 7 pages glorifying a drug-drenched album is fine for Newsweek, but just one little page blowing the whole thing up, showing exactly what it's all about, and proving the case from the Beatles' own words. They couldn't print that material. So now we're still in the drug revolution, we're still in the drug culture, and we still have millions of young people knee-deep in marijuana, LSD, cocaine, and heroin, and who knows what else. Now quickly, I'm contending tonight, and I know this is a bold statement, but I might as well make it here as any place. Rock and roll is the father of the drug culture. And if you miss that, my friends, you'll never really understand why so many of our young people are right now doing what they're doing. There are millions of young people tonight that are in the rock and roll culture and they're in the drug culture at the same time. Well, Max Rafferty again said, rock and roll and drugs go together like Mary and Mary's little lamb. Does that tell you something? By the way, he hit it right on the head. That's true. Rock and roll and drugs go together like Mary and her little lamb. The Beatles came out a year later in '68 with this song called Magical Mystery Tour, Pushing Drugs. In fact, this was written under the influence of marijuana. They came out in '69 with the White Album. By the way, this is timely out here because Charlie Manson's still in the pokey because of this thing. This is the album that Sharon Tate and some of the other ones listened to very carefully before they went. Not Sharon Tate, she's the one that got zapped. Who was that? Who was Charlie Manson's little friend there? Yeah, that's the crowd. Spooky and Dookie and a lot of other ones there. That's a weird bunch. Anyway, Tex Watson. Who wrote the book Child of God, Child of Satan? Susan Atkins. There you go. Yeah, thank you. Susan Atkins was part of his little crowd. Incidentally, Sharon Tate actually pleaded for the life of her unborn baby. She was 8 months pregnant. They carved the baby out first before they killed her. Now, that was all in the inspiration of Helter Skelter and a few other goodies on that particular song. That was '69. But let's go on further. Let's go to 1971 and 72. By the way, most of you have never seen this album, I don't believe. Maybe you have. This is called Sometime in New York City. This was put out by John Lennon and Yoko Ono. This is where they have really come out and told the world where they stood. This is their theme song here was Angela. This is Angela Davis, their ode to Angela Davis, praising her and telling the world what a wonderful gal she was. Sister Oh Sisters tells us that we're going to build a new world, but we have to learn how to fight first. Woman is the nigger of the world. Isn't that a wonderful little one there? And here we have some cruel male carving up this innocent little female with a knife. Here we have Richard Nixon and Mao Zedong in the nude dancing to a song called We're All Water. Attica State, I won't read that. Now's the time for revolution, we're told by Johnny. Bloody Sunday, Born in a Prison, John Sinclair, The Luck of the Irish, praising the IRA. By the way, he was also giving money at this time to the SDS and to the IRA. Then he came out, of course, with this album, and this is the one that our young people were singing called Give Peace a Chance and Power to the People. Give peace a chance. This is when John was leading the struggle against the war in Vietnam. Give peace a chance really meant let's give the communists a chance. And in case you think they forgot that, by the way, after the death of John Lennon, some of the biggest articles praising John Lennon were in the Soviet press. I have a clipping here from the New York Times, which I've been told is the mother of all truth, so it must be true, stating that the Soviet press was bending over backwards praising John Lennon and calling him a fighter for peace. Now, friends, when the Soviet press calls John Lennon a fighter for peace, I want to know why we are deifying John Lennon in this country. Why are we deifying an individual who has called Jesus Christ everything under the books, has referred to Christianity as dirt, was an atheist to the core, as I used to say to his booties, was a fighter for peace on the side of the communists, and when John Lennon dies, we gave him nearly as much time at his death as we gave to President Kennedy at his death. In fact, someone said even more time, nearly. But we certainly played more songs on behalf of John Lennon than we did on JFK. only because JFK didn't write too many songs. When I hear he could have written some very interesting songs, however. Now that's just a brief background on John Lennon. What's his legacy? I've summarized his legacy in 4 points. Rock and roll today. The legacy of John Lennon is rock and roll today, primarily. Rock and roll today is doing 4 things. Number 1 is pushing the sex revolution like you just can't believe, my friends. And if we didn't have so many ladies here and so forth, and we just had some gentlemen here, I even read some of the things for you. But we are pushing the sexual revolution. Number 2, we're still pushing the drug revolution. Number 3, we're pushing the social revolution. And I know you can take it, but when you walk outside the doors, they can't take it. The social revolution is another fancy word for the Marxist-Leninist revolution. And we're also pushing perversion. Perversion. Just as I was coming out this direction, an article hit the paper by Gallup Youth Poll. In fact, the date here is March the 10th, 1981. The headline is, Teens Pick Queen as Favorite Rock and Roll Band. Teenagers picked Queen, the Queen rock band, as one of their top 3 rock bands. Let me give you the top 3. In the eyes of our young people in this country today, the top 3 rock groups are Queen, Led Zeppelin, and AC/DC. 2 of the 3 groups are pure homosexual groups. In fact, Queen stands for a male homosexual. Right here. This is one of the records that I could bring with me. Some of them are so bad, I don't carry them because if I'm killed, someone might say, look what he's got with him, you see? You got to be very careful when you do that. I don't even know how to get in here. Oh, here it is. Now, this was one song that John cut. There's no way, my friends, that you would read this to an audience. In fact, when I read this to my pet turtle, the turtle died. Does that tell you something? One of the filthiest, raunchiest rock and roll songs that I have ever heard in my life is Get Down, Make Love by Queen, which is the #1 rock group in the eyes of our young people today. The filthiest number. That's saying a lot. Get down. Oh, they understand it. Oh, let me tell you. Hey, I heard that too. Kids understand that? You don't miss this one. I even understood this. Yeah, well, an IQ of 22, I got that one right off the bat. Led Zeppelin was #2. By the way, the lead guitar player for Led Zeppelin is knee-deep in the occult. In fact, he was the one who bought Alex Crowley's home in London. And he's pushing all the black witchcraft materials out of his bookstore right now. That's Led Zeppelin, and they've been involved in that area. And then AC/DC is a wonderful group, as you can see already. That's a good bisexual group. So here we have 3 top rock and roll groups that are considered by our teenagers in this country as the top 3 groups. And we wonder what's wrong? Well, wonder no longer. KISS. And I'm just going through these very quickly. I just have a few minutes anyway. KISS is geared for 13-year-olds. And ladies and gentlemen, I just want to, and I'm no Puritan, by the way, and I'm not a Victorian prude, and I can even spell sex. But it took me 3 months to get the courage to tell my wife what this record was about. 3 months, maybe more, I forget. And we've been married, 50, 60 years. I want you to know something. This record geared for a 13-year-old by KISS, you would not play to your household pet. You wouldn't put the words on paper and put them in your bird cage. And yet 13-year-old kids are swallowing this type of material. If I explained to you just plaster caster alone, most of you ladies would crawl under the table. And that's for a 13-year-old. And if some of you men over 30 want to look at it when we're through, come on up. Exile, I want to kiss you all over. There's no way in the world I'd touch that with a 10-foot pole. Rod Stewart, Ain't Love a Bitch. Do you think I'm sexy? I wouldn't touch that. Hot Legs by Rod Stewart. By the way, his philosophy is very simple. His philosophy is, I only can be faithful for an hour or 2. Here's Frank Zappa and the Mothers. Hey, my friends, I spent $7 on this lousy record, took it home, played it, analyzed. I got the words right here, discovered there isn't a place in the country I could read the words. So I wasted $7. Frank Zappa is big on our college and university campuses today. Here's Ted Nugent. Excuse me, Mr. Welch. Here's Ted Nugent. You can't see this either, but this is a winner and a half. But I just picked this up on Sunset Boulevard, too, with a friend that's here tonight, incidentally. Now they're putting some labels on some of our records. This one says, "This album includes lyric content which may be offensive to some members of the public." Yeah. Hey, you wouldn't take this to a vet office and play it there, I'll tell you that right now. And I have nothing against animals, I love them. But you'd kill the animals with this type of material. And we're playing it to, and our young people are listening to this type of material. 24 hours a day. And some of you parents know what I'm talking about. Now some of you are still wondering what I'm talking about. Hey, let me tell you. This is Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones called Some Girls. The reason I bring this along is because this is the album that triggered the Reverend Jesse Jackson. And let me tell you, when you can trigger him in anything in this area, you're really doing something. I noticed that he's the one that's telling us how to get out of El Salvador. But anyway, the Reverend Jesse Jackson got uptight because Some Girls here has some real interesting words, which are rather racial, by the way. In fact, if I read it to you, you'd understand right away why Reverend Jesse Jackson is rather uptight with it. I'd say that they were rather racial. Earlier, the Rolling Stones came out with this album, and I'm just doing this in a hurry to show you that themes haven't changed much over the years. This was called Beggar's Banquet. Originally, it was going to have a toilet seat here with a roll of toilet paper, 4-letter words scattered around. They were going to title this one, "God Rolls His Own." And you don't think that's from a sick mind? The only reason it never came out with that title is because the producer said he didn't think it would sell. He didn't think it would sell yet. I think that's what he said. It won't sell yet. Hey, it sells today. Sell today. I wouldn't doubt that they'd come out with it before we're through. That doesn't make any difference, I guess. This is one of our more famous groups out here. In fact, if you have cable television out in the Los Angeles area, you can tune in and hear Dr. Hook nearly every day in the Los Angeles area. I brought this along only because I wanted to show you a few things that I thought I might be able to discuss. This album is Columbia Records, incidentally, and let's see, it's copyrighted by Evil Eye Music, Inc. And I would tell you something nearly, I would think, right there. But then I'm a bit prejudiced when it comes to that. Some men need some killer weed, some men need cocaine, some men need some cactus juice to purify their brains, some men need 2 women, some need alcohol. Everybody needs a little something, but Lordy, I need it all. Sometimes, get this, sometimes I dream of chicks to bring me everlasting joy. Sometimes I dream of animals, sometimes I dream of boys. Now, here in 4 lines, notice what you have in just 4 little lines. You have homosexuality, bestiality, and chickology. 4 lines. In fact, the only thing that's missing is treology. And I don't have the courage to read the refrain. Come on, babies, grease your lips, put on your hats and swing your hips. Don't forget to bring your whips. We're going to the Freakers' Ball. I bet you don't hardly wait. By the way, a Freakers' Ball is a homosexual bash, generally in San Francisco, but I'm sure they have a few down here. Yeah, that's right. We're in California, too. I keep forgetting. We're in Fruitville, USA. Blow your whistle, bang your gong, roll up something to take along. Feels so good, it must be wrong. Freaking at the Freakers' Ball. All the fags and the dykes, they booing together. I mean, nearly gets you right here. Leather freaks dressed in all kinds of leather. The greatest, the saddest, and the masochist too, screaming, "Please hit me, baby, I'll hit you." Hard-ass long-hairs loving each other. Brother with sister, son with mother. Smear my body up with butter. Take me to the Freakers' Ball. Well, they used to keep the farmers in business. Pass the roach and pour the wine. I'll kiss yours, and I wouldn't touch the next line for the 10-foot pole. But listen to this, my friends. Black ones, white ones, yellow and red ones, necrophiletics looking for dead ones. Guess what we're into now, my friends? Necrophileticism, making love to dead people. Incidentally, this is Alice the Cooper. Well, he lives right out here. I've heard a few goodies about him since the last time I was out here, in fact, but I can't pass them along for fear that they might be true. But this is Alice Cooper and his Cold Ethel. Listen to this. Welcome to my nightmare, in case you're going to buy the record. One thing I miss is cold Ethel and her skeleton kiss. We made whoopee last night. We met last night making love by the refrigerator light. Ethel, let me squeeze you in my arms. Ethel, come and freeze me with your charms. One thing, no lie. Ethel's frigid as an Eskimo pie. She's cool in bed. She ought to be, 'cause Ethel's dead. And then the rest of the story goes on how he keeps her in the refrigerator during the day, pulls her out at night and makes whoopee with her, and then stashes her back in the refrigerator at night. And you don't think we're sick, my friends? Even Ann Landers said that was sick. And then Alice Cooper came out with this one here. Now listen to this one, if this doesn't. Has your food digested, by the way? Listen to this one. I love the dead before they're cold, their bluing flesh for me to hold. Cadaver eyes upon me only see nothing. I love the dead before they rise, no farewells and no goodbyes. This line is a jewel. I'll tell you, if this isn't a capital offense, I'd like to know what isn't. He says, I never even knew your now rotting face. While friends and lovers mourn your civic grace, I have other uses for you, darling. I love the dead. Now, if you don't think we're moving in that direction, hey, by 1985, if they don't declare the Marquis de Sade a holy man, I'm going to miss it by a few years, I'll tell you that right now, because that's where we're moving. This is Elton John. What are you going to do here? You know what I mean? Elton John's the one who's going to burn down the mission. He's going to burn down the rich man's home. Behind four walls of stone, he says, the rich man sleeps. We're going to burn it. We're going to burn their keep. We're going to burn down the rich man's home. Incidentally, does anyone have any idea how much Elton John makes every year? And they talk about being we're supposed to be hypocrites because we're over 25, right? Hey, let me tell you. In 1977-78, over a 14-month period, it's been reported that Elton John made over $50 million. And he's talking about burning down the rich man's home. Incidentally, this is his Captain Fantastic album. I wanted to show you how brazen they are. And again, Jack, you're going to have to be my witness. Here's Elton John here, and here's his boyfriend right next to him. He actually puts his little lover with him. And here's his philosophy, in case you're wondering what's going on right now among our young people. He says, there's nothing wrong with going to bed with somebody of your own sex. I just think people should be very free with sex. They should draw the line at goats. That's Elton John's philosophy. Now give him credit. At least he drew the line. You know what I mean? Because, hey, right now, the philosophy among the rock world is, what I want to do, I do. Who I want to blink, I blink. That's the philosophy. And then we have Village People. Okay? Well, look, the kids like Queen, pro-homosexual. They like AC/DC, pro-homosexual. And here's Village People, a group actually put together by Jacques Morali, right here in your area. And Jacques Morali admits that the only reason for the group is to make homosexuality respectable to the American public. In fact, he says, I'm a gay myself. And this one's called cruising. Does that tell you something? It leads out with, I'm a cruiser. And in case you're not up on what that means, it's a homosexual expression for one who's out looking for sex. Here's YMCA. Oh, this is a joke and a half. YMCA. You know, there were actually some YMCA directors in this country who wanted to make that their theme song. Until someone pointed out something to them. That the record had to do with the gays coming to the YMCA to cruise. And then they decided they should sue them, which is really going from one extreme to the other, I would suggest. But you know what scares me? Shortly after that, they came out with one called In the Navy. And the United States Navy was going to use that for their recruiting song. Until someone pointed out to them that they were going to cruise the battleships. And then they decided, that isn't our reputation yet. You know what I mean? But as far as I'm concerned, if you want to get right down to real perversion, my friends, I want to show you, I want to share this with you. This breaks my heart. This shows the mentality of our young people, and maybe even the morality of our young people. Maybe sex education is working. This album is called The Wall. Can you all see that? It's called The Wall. This is by Pink Floyd. It's just a wall. our young people kept this number one on the charts last year for 17 weeks. Number one. Sold into the millions. It stayed in the top 40 for 36 weeks. It stayed in the top 60, I think, nearly for the whole year. This is the one that goes, we don't need no education. We don't need no thought control. Remember that one? And half of it you can't read because you're a respectable group here tonight. But you know how it ends? You know how that song ends? This album ends with a ode to suicide. To suicide. Goodbye, cruel world. Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. Goodbye, cruel world, I'm leaving you today. Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. And incidentally, now for most of you that are normal, that might not mean a great deal. You know what I mean? But I want you to know something, ladies and gentlemen. Millions of our young people right now are not normal. They're shot on drugs, for one thing. And all they need is just the least little suggestion, and that's the end of it right there. And I could tell you story after story. I could break your heart tonight with young people committing suicide. I just picked this up in Dallas, Texas. I was speaking there yesterday to a group. This is called In Loving Memory of Larry, victim of marijuana. Killed himself at 23 years of age. This was in Wisconsin, incidentally. John, you'll be interested in this. It mentions this. It says, after Larry's death, we learned that from January the 1st to April the 3rd, that's just a 3-month period of time, in the Northwest Metropolitan, well, Northwest Metropolitan, let me tell you, in Wisconsin is zero. There aren't that many people up there, for one thing, unless it's going to Minneapolis or something. 9 young people between the ages of 16 and 24 committed suicide. Perversion, drugs, revolution, and sex. And when I say sex, I'm not talking about love. You all know, I hope you understand that. I didn't get a chance to go back and tell you what that whole deal is. I'm not talking about love, friends. I'm talking about sex. The separation of love and sex. That's rock and roll. That's the legacy of John Lennon. Hero, right now in our press. And these are the types of materials. And by the way, I brought the material along. I want to make this point very clear. The type of material that I brought you tonight is the material that I thought I could get past John the censor. That's true. And let me tell you, I left hundreds of these things at home that would, you know, you wouldn't play it. If I had an audience here of German Shepherd dogs, I wouldn't dare play it. Isn't that amazing, friends? That's the type of material that our young people are listening to right now, tonight. Tonight. I want to close with this word from James Russell Lowell. I think it's a very fitting conclusion. Once to every man and nation comes the moment to decide, in the strife of truth with falsehood, for the good or evil side. Then it is the brave man chooses, while the coward stands aside. I'm praying tonight that we can make the water boil, and that you will really be a teabag tonight, and your true strength will really come out in this type of hot water. That you'll be willing to take a stand for truth against falsehood, and you're willing to be brave, because let me tell you, friends, just to even mention the word rock and roll now to our young people is nearly a declaration of war. And some of you know that too. They actually think you're stealing their most prized possession. What they don't realize is that they have clutched a snake to their bosom. Thank you for this opportunity. I trust that if you're interested in this area, we can get together sometime. Thank you very much.
Powerful, Dave. Get rid of all that junk.